Cool. Thank you all for coming. I'll do the requisite thing. Please remember to put your phones on quiet, and afterwards do rate the talk so that develop know how much to regret this. Yeah, and I'll dive in. Hi, welcome to my talk. My name is Jacob Mills. I am senior level designer at Roll7, most notoriously on Rollerdrome, and that is what I'm going to be talking about today. The talk is titled Closing the Gap, Designing Levels for a New Genre in Rollerdrome. So let's dive in. First, a super short summary of my entire life history. Be professional. Hi, I'm Jacob. I did a programming-heavy university course that included a very tech-heavy placement. I was a professional programmer at TT Games for all of about 3 months before hopping into design and never looking back. I worked on a bunch of LEGO games, a bunch of Ubisoft games, and then landed here at Roll7 on Rollerdrome. But what is Rollerdrome? If you're not familiar, Rollerdrome is a blended genre skater shooter. You complete levels by killing guys, like in a shooter, and you do tricks, like in a skater. It's got this beautiful graphic novel art style. It's got this soundtrack of absolute banging tunes. It is fast. It is frenetic. It's really hard. It can be really quite demanding, but it is so fun and so fluid. If it resonates, it is really satisfying to play. So if you like action games, please do check it out. Just gonna let those 2 grenades hit. Very good. So that's got you all pumped, but what is this talk about? First, I will introduce the state of the game as it was back when I joined the team. The bulk of the talk will then be a series of mini-level postmortems. We'll focus on key parts of the process for each, what worked, what didn't. Hopefully we'll identify some lessons that you can learn from my mistakes. Very broadly, the topics we will cover are the joys of working in a new genre, receiving and actioning feedback, and then the sleep paralysis demon, which is design block. It's a grab bag of design topics, so there should be something in there which is relatable and relevant to you, and those key takeaways are what we will review at the end. So let's dive into that intro. As I was saying earlier, the final product is an intense experience, but a lot of that intensity is driven by core gameplay loops that were already locked in place way back when I joined the team in January 2021. So all the way back then, on the shooter side, like I said earlier, you kill people to beat the level, yep. Kills drop health pickups, so you're incentivized to push forward and pick up those little green diamonds. And there are a variety of weapons, a variety of enemies in various stages of development at this point, but mostly in there, and the idea is different tools for different jobs, right? Standard stuff, but really good, just to advertise the game. On the skater side, you do tricks. Tricks increase your score. Doing a variety of tricks increases the rate at which you gain that score. And finally, tricks restore the ammo in your weapons. Now, that last one is what marries the 2 genres, skating and shooting, but we're just going to just ignore that for now and look at these other elements individually. Does anything come to mind? A little bit of audio there. It's exciting. When we get down to brass tacks, Rollerdrome at its core could be described as Doom on skates. But if we gather all these elements up, these are the key ingredients that are making Rollerdrome feel good already, early on as a prototype. But what about the levels I hear you clamoring for? Sure. First, a quick primer on some terms I'm going to be throwing around a lot. That's Kara Hassan. She is the player character. This is a ramp. When Kara launches off a ramp, she gets what we in the biz call big air. Sorry, I'm not a skater. Anyway, yeah, that's a ramp. This is a roller. It's a type of smooth ramp that you roll up and over. This is a quarter pipe. You might recognize it as half of a half pipe. Kara goes up, she comes back down, she can grind along the edge of them. And this is a fun box. Fun boxes are any island formed of any combination of any of these elements. So if we look at O1 Arena, and that's the dev name, O1 meaning it's the first level in the game, Arena meaning it's in the arena biome. So O1 Arena, it is surrounded by quarter pipes on all sides. It's got a cheeky roller ramp just there for you to get to that side bit. And it's got this fun box in the middle, which is just basically ramps in a circular formation. All right, we're all on the same page. Excuse that lid squeaking. Cool. When I joined the team, there had been a lot of exploration and experimentation into how the levels were going to be played, and the direction was really solidifying. First things first, this is going to be an arena shooter. You're not getting from A to B, despite all these cool movement options. It's not a platformer. You're going to be locked in these arenas, just murdering guys, right? There are already a few core pillars established for the levels, which I can really boil down here. really summarize as keep Kara moving and encourage player choice. The keep Kara moving pillar mostly means minimizing snags. If we look at O1 Arena again, we can see it is excuse me, exceedingly smooth and round. There are as few steps, walls, and corners as possible so that Kara doesn't get stuck or caught in them. Enabling player choice can be a matter as simple as just properly spacing these elements. There's already metrics established for this, namely leaving at least 30 meters of space between quarter pipes and ramps, which is enough space for the player to decide whether to go for that big air, see, it was important, or head around the side and take out some enemy or dodge some incoming attack. It's about giving players breathing room in the layout itself so that they're not locked into any one path. They've got time to make decisions. The game isn't playing itself. In terms of setting, at this early point, there are 4 biomes planned: arena, mountain, canyon, and mall. And the team had just passed green light, so they already had these 2 arenas built already to a really good standard. They were doing investigations into the look of the mall. The game already looked pretty sick in general. The gameplay was in a really good spot, so I was pumped to get started working on such a slick, stylish game. So let's dive in, working in a new genre. At this point, vertical slice was approaching. Oh no! And after a little time to settle in, I was given my first task, 07 Mountain. So again, that's dev name, 7th level in the game, in the mountain setting. As I said, this is my first task, so they start me off easy. Paul, the creative director, has already made this first draft grey box, and all I have to do is polish it up, clean it up, get it ready for the artists, and finalize for vertical slice. It is the team's first crack at a mountain biome level, so concept was already in progress. The level already had this really strong identity with these 3 islands, this tower in the corner as a landmark, a cheeky interior under one of the islands, which was required for a gift moment, which are these key gameplay moments that we wanted to recreate so that the final product would live up to the initial promise of Paul's viral tweets. This game literally got picked up by Roll7 because of how rad these gifts looked, and the studio was really keen to deliver on that initial promise, right? We can take these points and treat them as a basic spec for the level, and I had a bunch of initial thoughts about it as well. Not to dunk on Paul too harshly, but the entrance is pretty boring. It's this short, straight line, no grand reveal. It's really enclosed by these high walls. In fact, the whole level's pretty enclosed by those same high walls, right? And it's really boxy. When you're inside it, you can almost feel the grid, especially visible when you view it from above. It's this kind of shorn square shape. The level's pretty flat in general, which felt like a missed opportunity in terms of the mountain setting, and verticality is just one of those level design easy wins that lives in my head rent-free. And when you're in it, despite being enclosed by those high walls, the layout itself is so open, you're so exposed as a player, there's nowhere to hide. After years of working on a cover shooter, this made me feel really uneasy. And we can grab these 4 points, and these look like a pretty good angle of attack to amp up the mountain feel without messing too much with the other key requirements. So I'm going to grab them, going to treat them as my action list, and we're going to go through them, solve them one by one. Level design. So first things first, that entrance. I stole a ski slope from someone else's grey box, and I mean I stole it. I'm still new, I'm still getting used to the tools. It looks like a ski slope, it fits the setting. We know it works, no need to reinvent the wheel. Thank you, Kev. I don't know if Kev's here, but he's the other level designer. I'll reference him every time I steal his work. I did do this pro level designer technique, right? Where I bent this ski slope round a corner. And that is #level design, and I will see you next year. But the point of that is that this is the most basic form of denial and reward, right? First you can't see the level, then you can see the level. Then you can't see the level, then you can see the level. Builds anticipation, lets players make a little plan before they dive in, lets them see the level, before they land in it. Good stuff. You can also see that I've removed some of the walls on one side, so it already feels much less closed in, much more like we're on a mountainside. These are easy wins. So I'm actually going to take those first 2 points, boring entrance and enclosed, smashed it, done, solved. Off to a great start in this new job. Level design is easy. You can also see here my early clumsy attempts at breaking the boxy feeling. I'm trying to add a little bit of extra verticality as well, and I try a couple of different things to give the level some extra height, but this isn't really working. I'm just kind of bloating out the footprint. It's not making the level flow any better. So I try something completely different. I shift that focus on verticality to the other side, the other 2 islands, expand the interior space so that the lower floor is the focus now instead of the roof. I try adding this big column to make it a bit less open and break up some of those long sight lines. And I'm attempting to give players a lot of options when it comes to transferring between the islands. But this isn't really working. We've lost some of that identity, that simplicity. Directors and leads are not vibing with this. Oh God, what's going wrong? To answer that, we're going to look at some ancient footage of Drew, our producer, playing this draft of the level, and watch out for these animations. But can anyone spot what's missing? What vital component of this game just isn't present in this draft? Bingo. Enemies, where are these guys? And it had been a few revisions, and directors and leads have been asking, where are the enemies? And I was like, I just really want to nail this flow first, you know? And they'd ask why I'm even trying to introduce verticality in cover. And I'd say, well, it incentivizes player movement. But I put some enemies in, lo and behold, their concerns are right. This level isn't working. And it's not like I was doing this stuff for no reason, right? I spent a lot of time as a designer getting used to blocking off sight lines or utilizing negative space in these ways to encourage movement, to encourage players to uncover hidden information and take different routes and experience the level in more interesting ways. And yeah, my experience is mostly cover shooters, but Doom utilizes cover as well. Players use it to kite enemies, bring them where they want, create breathing room, control the pace of fights. And Rollerdrome is just Doom on skates, right? So what's going wrong? Why isn't this working for me? Why? Why though? At this point, after joining the team, it felt like I was having to relearn the job, which felt like a really weird aha moment to have because I've done that before, quite a few times actually. So I'm going to pull out the relevant bits from my personal experience. We'll wrap back around, it'll all make sense. So as I said earlier, I started in code and then hopped into design, literally a whole different job, right? A whole different discipline. I'd done design work before, but never professionally. I had to learn the job on the job. Then, after a few years, becoming pretty capable and competent at designing for family-friendly puzzle, platformer Lego games, I went and worked on Rooty Tooty Loot and Shooty at UB, which is still design work, sure, but all of a sudden pure layout and world logic are of the utmost importance. Instead of puzzles and quests, I was doing mission flow and laying out combat encounters, still design, but the role really did feel completely different. Sure enough, coming from Ubisoft to Roll 7 meant a similar transition from shooters to whatever the hell this game is. No one's made it yet. We don't know. It's still in progress. Difficult. Now, changing projects or jobs like this can be an upheaval in all kinds of ways, but I'm focusing on these genre and discipline points because it'll happen to you. And my point is, yes, every time I found myself in these situations, I've had to effectively relearn how to do the job. But over the years, having hopped between various projects, I realized that despite the requirements for the individual project or individual genre changing quite drastically, there is one quite broad process that I found myself following every time. So let's inspect that process. We're getting somewhere. Now, I'm not saying that this is groundbreaking, despite the slide, or the right way to do things. There's no silver bullets in design. It's just what I have repeatedly found myself adhering to over the years. So I would wager that designers in the room will have found themselves doing something pretty similar. The process really is that broad, but that's kind of the point. Anyway, the first step is research, whether that's into the IP, the genre, the gameplay, the setting. Every project I join, every level I work on, I've got to do some prep work before I dive in. And then next comes planning. This might be your paper design, your initial sketches. If you're into design docs, this is where you can use them to solve some tricky problems before you jump in engine. And of course, that's stage 3, design. Actually gray boxing, right? Translating some idea from this thing in your head to an actual playable space that you can interact with. But of course, level design is more than just block out, right? At this point, you should be doing at least the bare bones implementation. Basic scripting, getting some semblance of mission flow in, for example, or throwing some enemies in, perhaps. You should be doing that at this phase. Should be. After that initial design and implementation, you've got iteration, which is basically a catch-all for do any of the prior 3 steps over and over and over again until the thing's in a decent state. All you're doing is polishing and bug fixing, and then hooray, you've made a level. Congrats. So the whole point of this is that I can use this process as a framework to evaluate and assess the work I've done on this level, right? Now, I thought I'd done a pretty decent amount of research. I'd played Doom 2016 again, one of my favorite games of all time. Great. Level design is easy. And I'd made that action list, so there was a plan. And then, I have messed up here. I've been trying to design this level purely with layout, not paying attention to the crucial other elements, in this case, the enemies. It is shameful. But this is why it's useful to have your process formalized like this, right? You can look at it and say, okay, how do I actually fix this? What have I done wrong? In this case, I can recognize that I've made a screw up here in design and implementation and say, maybe it's a good time to reinspect some fundamentals. We'll go back to research. And that's what I did. And my objective at this point is to really understand what Rollerdrome actually needs from its levels. What purpose do the levels serve in this game, right? So for that, we'll do a 2-pronged approach. We'll look at the enemies, the role of the enemies, what do they play in the game? Just been ignoring them so far. And then we'll look at how the game design accommodates the genre blend, see if we can lift any of that for the levels, right? So, those enemies. At this point, there was at least a concept for each one, and they were broadly functional in the game. Most of them were going to be used in this level. To try and give a quick insight, I've kind of divvied them up into these categories, but this is by no means definitive. We've got some ranged enemies, some of them shoot projectiles, some enemies deny areas, video games. But I will pick out 3 just to give a fuller picture. We've got melee guy, grunt, who like moves a little and just whacks you with a bat. Donk. We've got sniper, who stays rooted to a perch and snipes you from long range. And we've got this guy, rocket guy, warhead, who stays rooted to his perch as well and shoots these homing rockets which chase you, and you can shoot them out of the air, or you can dodge them, or you get exploded. But that's interesting. Both of those ranged enemies stay rooted, right? And that's by design. They're not realigning. They're not regaining their line of sight on Kara when she moves. That's that's by design. That's intentional. And in that case, the ranged enemies really need to maintain line of sight on her as much as possible to maintain pressure on the player, to keep the player moving. We want the player like shooting missiles out of the air and dodging incoming shots. We don't want Kara hiding in a corner or behind a rock. And thinking of the melee guy, this works the opposite way around as well. For the player to assess the state of play, make plans and execute them, they need line of sight on these enemies. So, okay, yeah, Rollerdrome is a shooter, but it's not a game about kiting enemies or ducking behind cover to block incoming fire like Doom. Counter to what I'd previously assumed, maintaining a line of sight is actually super important in this game for the enemies to apply pressure, for the player to make plans. Okay, that's good, that's a learning. What about the game design? Remember these dweebs? Sorry. Remember this one? Told you to ignore this one. Shoved it off to the side. Tricks restore ammo. This mechanic was in from the very start, the very first version of this game when it was this top-down game jam game. And it is the ebb and flow between the skating and the shooting. It is what marries the 2 genres together. But even at this early point, it's far from the only accommodation, the only big change that's been made to the game design in order to accommodate the genre blend. We can identify a few more just from playing, so let's do that. On the shooting side, auto-aim, your pistols, your shotgun. These are your bread and butter weapons. They each have this heavy dose of auto-aim that helps you line up shots in the midst of all this fast, frenetic action. Reflex time, in the same vein, every time you aim down sights, every time you hold the left trigger, you get a really generous portion of bullet time slow-mo. And again, it helps you line up those shots when the action is moving so fast. A little less sexy than the other 2, but there's a shared ammo pool. If you use ammo or gain ammo and then swap weapons, it doesn't matter. You've got the same proportion of ammo in your weapons, regardless, in the clip. Okay, that's the shooting side. What about the skating side? Sorry. No bailing. If you play Tony Hawk's and you land in the middle of a spin or a trick, he'll fall off his board like an amateur. Kara's a professional. You land in the middle of a spin, she will just style it out. She'll roll, she'll keep moving, she doesn't stop, she's a pro. And the same with grinding. No need to be micro-adjusting left and right. Grind as long as you want, as far as you want. Kara deals with it. She is a professional. Now we can gather all of these up, and it's kind of clear to me that these all serve the same core purpose, right? We're eliminating demands on player attention that would be necessary if it was just a shooter or just a skater. But because of the blend, if piled on top of everything else, this would just over-encumber the cognitive load of the player, right? If I was lining up headshots at full speed while managing all the ammo in all these different guns, while making sure I lined up tricks, while balancing on grinds, it would be way too much. And the Rollerdrome team had worked really hard in pre-production and prototyping to figure that balance out before I ever joined the team. Okay, combat requires line of sight for the enemies to apply pressure and for the player to make plans. The game design, if we really boil it down, we'll just say it accommodates the blend, but that encapsulates everything we just talked about, right? And at this point, a picture is forming really quite clearly in my mind. Yeah, Rollerdrome is a shooter, but it's not a game about precision aiming or managing excessive resources. And yeah, Rollerdrome is a skater, but it's not a game about perfectly nailing tricks or extended trick combos. It's becoming clear to me over time that in Rollerdrome, the enemies are the challenge and the skate elements are how you navigate between them. Rollerdrome is a game about closing the gap and looking like a badass while doing so. Oh my God, that's the name of the talk. What an incredible narrative. But yeah, my point is that yes, Rollerdrome is essentially Doom on skates, but the act of blending the two has created something entirely new, with entirely new considerations for the design. This is a custom commission from Kim, the character concept artist on Rollerdrome, and Yeah. Cool. Thank you for joining me on that journey. Now that we've done our proper due diligence, we have a newfound appreciation of what we need to do for this game. Let's revisit that plan that I made. Now, we've established how essential line of sight is, right? And if I just stand around my draft of the level at various points, huge portions of it are cut off by the elements that I've added, and that was intentional. But heading back to the spec and the action list, we can identify these two elements, right? These were meant to be solves. I was meant to be making the level more exciting and cool, but these are based on massive assumptions that I had made based on my past experience and perception at the time, but they're just plain wrong. We don't need the level to be more verticalityness, right, or less open, so throw them out. After that, all that's really left is to sort the kind of boxy feel and then general polish, and that's kind of the task I was given in the first place, but whatever. Looking at the original draft, it's clear that we do want to keep some things from my draft, things like the open sides where I've dropped the walls and the cool new entrance. They are absolute bangers. They really work. They help this mountain feel. It's good. There are also some like alternate routes that I've put in, which are pretty interesting, help the flow of the level, and where I put the care into just lining these islands up so the transfers work between them really nicely. That helps tons. That really helps the flow of the level. If I can just make that level wide, make it consistent, we'll have something good. So long as I recapture and retain that simplicity from the initial draft, right? And actually remember to add enemy waves this time. And I haven't even talked about collectibles of the second zone. But anyway, take the best bits of all that, my new understanding, we get this draft. And it's actually very similar to the original layout, but we do have some interesting extra options. And you can't really see this, but the space between those islands is being ever refined so that it's smooth every which way. Kara doesn't bonk her head so often. A few more iterations and a heavy dose of art magic, and we end up with this. 7 Mountain. We did it. We made one level in a video game. So, to summarize, what's the lesson there? Working in a new genre can be really hard, and my solution is to embrace the new. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. Here's the real detail. One trap I fell into is that I was really driven by my past experience. I took assumptions from that, combined it with my knowledge of other skaters, other shooters. It ended up leading me astray. While that research and experience is super valuable, it should have taken a backseat to more in-depth study of the new game right in front of me. My experience should have helped inform the design, sure, but not drive it. Next point, which is super important to me, level design extends beyond blockout, and despite being a huge proponent of this, I fell into that trap as well. What helps is to understand your process, formalize your process, and then you can cross-reference your work against that process like I did, and that helps you ensure that you're taking everything into account. Plug up those gaps. Finally, I was super fortunate that my studio had the patience to let me see this through, and I gained a lot of valuable insight from making these mistakes. We're not computers, we're not AI, we are humans, so please do schedule in time to learn, and likewise have patience with new starters, even if senior, when they are getting started in a new genre, whether that's entirely new or just unfamiliar to them. For Rollerdrome, all of this translates to embracing the blend, understanding that the game is more than the sum of its parts. It is a whole new beast, and another excuse to get that artwork up. Cool. That one was quite intense. These other two will go quicker, don't worry. Actioning feedback. I've all had to do that. Okay, cool. Time passes. I work on another level, 10 Canyon. We don't have time to talk about that. Ignore it. And then we pass vertical slice. Hooray! And then I'm given my next task, 08 Mall. So that's the 8th level in the game in the mall setting this time. This is actually going to be the second and final mall level in the game. The first one was an early game level, grey box by Kev. The art process for his level was beginning at the same time that I'm blocking mine out. So I have all of the benefit of that concept and art exploration work to go off when I'm getting started on my block out. From the kickoff, the gist of the requirements are that we want to, first off, it's a mid to late game level, so players should know what they're doing by now, and we can test them a little bit. And we want to integrate some of that mall setting into the level, which I interpret as a desire to echo some key mall-y features from the first mall level. Things like these shootable billboards. You shoot it, it becomes a ramp. Wow, that's cool. Things like these escalator, travelator things, because this is something you find in a mall. And balconies. The first level had inaccessible balconies higher up, but what if my level had accessible balconies? Level design. We also go into this level with a set of mild fears from the design side. Hope you've all played Metal Gear Solid 3, otherwise that... Namely, are our levels regressing to the mean, becoming kind of samey? So far, due to those keep Kara moving design considerations, they're all some kind of variant of this big open bowl surrounded by quarter pipes on all sides, and like, yeah, different shapes, different layouts, different settings, but are we just repackaging the same game? And from up high, there are also worries we won't deliver on these key set-piece moments from these viral tweets that got the game going in the first place. Every player that liked and retweeted this stuff will have some incredible version of the game in their head, right? We really want to live up to that. Okay, well, whatever. I spent a couple of weeks, and after some experimentation, made this. It's a top-down view. I had it in my head that I wanted to make this classic arena-like symmetrical space. My reasoning being that malls are man-made. Man-made things are more likely to be symmetrical, so this is the perfect setting to try that out. I also wanted my intent to be crystal clear, so I thought if I spent a bit of time, a couple of weeks, really nailing this concept before presenting it, it would help people buy what I was selling. It features innovative designs to address some of our fears, such as quarter pipes that point out to the edge of the level instead of into the middle. So instead of a bowl, it's more like a bow tie. And yeah, we also have those billboards, travelators, balconies. We also have these big cylindrical elevator shafts, which I hope provides some kind of cool wall ride moment, something that you might see in a GIF or a tweet. And I was into this level at the time, and the other designers thought it had some cool lines and stuff, so we showed it to directors and art, and uh-oh, symmetry doesn't work. It's repetitive, no landmarks, it's too gamey. And I'm like, oh, we can unsymmetrize it, I can make the corners different. Art will go in and they'll put shops around. We can use them as landmarks, right? Quick aside on this one. I wasn't really appreciating how fundamental this bit of feedback was at the time. Symmetry in Rollerdrome means that players are essentially forced into making the same lines, doing the same moves, no matter where they go in the level. It effectively strips players of choice, which is in direct opposition to one of these core pillars, right? Not good. Anyway, there's more feedback coming in. This doesn't look like a mall or anywhere earthly or human-made. And again, there'll be shops around the edge, guys. It'll look like a mall. Oh, I've got it. There's too much out of bounds, which is something I just have intentionally not mentioned because it's really weird. But everywhere outside of the playable space, everywhere now in red, is out of bounds, which means that when you fall out of the level, which happens a lot in this layout, you kind of get respawned at the edge of the level. It really breaks the flow of gameplay. It's just kind of naff. But my intent was, this is interesting negative space. The player can see an enemy, but there's no direct line to get there. It's interesting. Ooh, in practice, not so much. And no one actually mentioned this, but this supposed GIF moment that I did was actually a big rip-off of something I'd already done in 10 Canyon, the level that we skipped, and arguably did it better there. So this wasn't an improvement or an innovation, just a cheap imitation. So it's anyway. Took all this feedback on board, recolored the out-of-bounds areas. That'll fix it. Also worked to break some of the symmetry in each corner, so at least the options in each corner are different, even if on the macro it is still pretty symmetrical. I also worked to literally inject one of those GIF moments beat for beat. The direction of the game has changed a lot since then, right? We've done a lot of work since Paul made those first GIFs. In this kind of arena gameplay that we're going for, this kind of just breaks the flow of the level. It's really hard to get them in a natural way. These changes aren't really cutting it. But if we look here, I've still got this super valid feedback, and we've still got those initial requirements in the bank. So what do we do in that situation? Oh yeah, got to process, right? Easy. Sometimes you've got to climb back up that ladder, right? Back to the drawing board. Thankfully, the feedback I've had is really good, very direct and actionable. I've done the classic technique of showing people what they don't want so that we can home in on what they do. The art lead points me again in their art brief, which includes a bunch of real-world mall plans, and an idea starts to form. We want this thing set in a mall. Yeah. So what if I make up a mall-y intersection, some place where the concourses meet at a junction like this, and then I just try and fit a level in, just like they do in the real-world Rollerdrome event, if it was real. Rollerdrome's like Monaco. We're taking over the city streets for a race. We're taking over malls and holiday chalets for a blood sport. But what if I did that? I retrofit the existing functional space into one of these skate park / death arenas. And without tooting my own horn too hard, I don't need to elaborate on this much further. This draft actually ticks all the boxes. It looks like a skate park. It looks like a mall. It doesn't have a silly amount of out of bounds. It's definitely not symmetrical. It's got quarter pipes around the edge, sure, but they're not continuous. You have to be paying attention as a player. It's a little bit more technical to play. Further iterations just refine and polish this core concept. There's verticality, yes, but keeping it focused around one side and around the edges means that it's not a line of sight blocker. Instead, it's this series of deadly sniper perches and an exciting upper route for players to puzzle out. You can see the DNA of that draft very clearly in the end product. And oh, you want GIF moments? Make our own damn GIF moments. So yeah, this is probably my favorite level in the game. You can tell I'm very proud of the turnaround. This new draft really did go down a storm when we first introduced it. So How did we get there? The problem I've identified here is that you can be in the job as long as you want, you can make as many levels as you want, they cannot all be bangers. Becoming comfortable with and accepting feedback and learning how to interpret and action it goes a long way. I think that's something we're all learning just forever, right? But in this case, what would have helped me out is don't hide your intent. Time box your proofs of concept, have conversations early, listen and learn from your team's past work. If right at the start, instead of spending 2 weeks working on some symmetrical arena-like level because I wanted to, I had said, oh, I want to make a symmetrical arena-type level, and actually listened when Paul said, yeah, we tried that, it doesn't really work, it strips the players of choice. Would have saved us all a lot of grief, right? But if you do find yourself, in that situation, don't be afraid to reset. Kill your darlings. Sometimes you got to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just make a better baby. Thank you. A lot of my best work has come from having the courage to wipe the slate clean. And finally, level designers, embrace the setting. I'm really guilty of this, but we all know in our heart of hearts there is no such thing as just fix it in art. So let's consider how our levels will sit in the world that we're building them for, and the end result will be better for it. If you're struggling, talk to your fellow designers, talk to your environment artists, you're not alone. That is the real superpower of teamwork. Thanks, buddy. All right, let's talk about design block. More time passes. I work on another level, 2 Canyon. Don't have time to talk about that one, but I do need to lay a bit of context. What you need to know about this one is that after the grueling process that I've just been through for 8 more, I actually really nailed this level. The concepts were really good. The idea came fully formed in my head from the kickoff. I knew the tools by this point well enough to like bash out a first strong draft and do these really quick fire iterations. It was genuinely the smoothest level design process I've ever had in my entire life. So going into my next level, 11 Arena, what could go wrong? Now, the prior 2 arenas had been in the game a long time and were already in a really good state. So the biome already had this really strong identity, right? In the lore, they are custom built for the sport of Rollerdrome. So they're like velodromes mixed with skate parks, mixed with those death arenas. But they are simple, uniform, and elegant in design and construction. And as I was saying, the process for O2 Canyon went so smoothly, I was feeling pretty good heading into this one. But a few considerations. It's my first time making an arena biome level. As I say, those other 2 levels have been in a good state since I joined the team. It's not just the final level that I will be making for this game, it's actually the final level in the game. So it's got to hit all of those last level markers, right? It's got to be challenging, it's got to be memorable. So, you know, no pressure. I looked at a lot of velodrome reference, and I looked at those previous 2 levels. One's a bowl, one's a velodrome. What if I put a bowl inside of a velodrome? So what we're looking at here, this kind of happy Cyclops, and I showed it to the team. And the feedback was good, actually. Like, there's a seed of an idea here. It's simple, but that's good for the arena biome. But I'll be completely honest, I didn't like what I was making, right? I didn't have any faith in it. I was trying stuff out, but I had design block. And that's just like writer's block, right? Like just a complete brick wall in the creative process. So how do we fix that? Well, I don't know about you, but the first thing I do is just kind of flail around a bit. I tried some completely different things like this happy koala face. I'm still not feeling it, though. This doesn't feel like a constructed space. Maybe with a bit more polish, it could be something. No, asking for feedback, the team could see the potential for these ideas, but it's clear they're not fully formed yet. I feel the same. Spend some more time experimenting, leveraging some of that hard-fought tool expertise that we had by this point in the project, and came up with this, a weird shape. But I like the potential of this, right? It's unique, it looks deliberate, it looks built and constructed, and it provides some interesting options for the player. So maybe a few more days and the weird shape forms the basis of this Waluigi draft. I'm trying to be compact. I'm trying to give players opportunity to get air. The south end is kind of tagged on, but whatever. Try another version of this. Realize that I've fallen into the symmetry trap again. So rework that. Rework the south end by giving it an asymmetrical fun box, an asymmetrical quarter pipe. And there's something here. It's a uniform arena shape, but without being a bowl or a velodrome. It's more of an egg. And it's got some interesting elements. There are lots of opportunities for getting air on the weird shape. It's got the first draft of this upper outside route, just floating rails at this point, but you know, it's concept. And there's boost pads. Boost pads exist. Wow, I haven't seen them in a level for a while. Whoa, cool. There's something here, but again, the feedback I'm getting is that we're not there yet. The level's got 2 distinct ends, sure, but players mostly end up sticking around the weird shape, the north end, and that's symmetrical, and we know that symmetry doesn't work in Rollerdrome. What I could really use at this point is some time to let this kind of tangle of problems sit in my head and churn in the background. It's really lucky that I got 2 Canyon done so quick before this, because just getting to this point on 11 Arena has taken ages. And there are these impending deadlines as well. So, whoa, pressure's on, but I do have time. This nice simple timeline I've been showing doesn't actually give you the full picture. I have been deceiving you the entire presentation. The level production schedule actually looks like this, which makes sense, right? Real life isn't neat. But if we just focus in on just this level, sorry for the jump scare. This is where we are, and yeah, it's the end of the grey box phase, but have no fear. It's followed by it's followed by playtest, sorry, skipping over my notes, which is playtest where the level gets played by all of us, mostly internally. We would have external playtests, but at this point, early days, just by us in the team. And that's followed by FB for feedback, right? Which is more time to grey box. This is time to implement the feedback that we generate during the playtest phase. While the playtest phase is going on for this level, I'll just be working on something completely different. In this case, it just happens to be the boss zone that comes after this arena. Every level schedule was laid out like this, with alternating implementation and playtesting phases. So the processes that I've been describing weren't as linear as presented. For a lot of production, there'd be 3 levels living in my head, all at various stages of development, but my focus was always on one in particular, the one right in front of me. So at this point, I actually did have a few weeks to work on something completely different, while the knot of problems with this level slowly untangled in my head. So we can fast forward to the feedback phase. 3 weeks have passed, we've all played this draft a bunch, and we all have a much better understanding of why we're not vibing with it. Yeah, the north half is symmetrical, we know that. The boost pads actually keep you locked into a path. They don't encourage player choice at all. There's a reason we haven't really used them like this in the other levels. The quarter pipe, the asymmetrical quarter pipe that I added in on that fun box doesn't actually lead you anywhere, just into a wall. These are good starting points, but I've been thinking a lot on what's worked before and what I can integrate into this design. So let's do it. We're going to take what we had, squash it together, add the alcove from 06 Arena to break some of that symmetry, thanks Kev, rotate the fun box so that the quarter pipe actually leads somewhere into that alcove, and that's pretty much what this draft is, right? This is starting to feel like something now. Those problems are starting to get solved. We are homing in on it. These new rounder elements that I've added really fit the arena setting, so we can build on that. And finally swallow the pill that the weird shape has served its purpose. Rest in peace. We swap it out instead for this tiny fun box, which means we have finally broken the last vestiges of symmetry once and for all, so that's really good. And the spirit of the weird shape does live on in this next draft, where I add this little turd as an asymmetrical counterpart to the tiny fun box. And combined with getting a good version of that potential upper root that we first thought about so long ago, baby, we got a stew going. We've done it. We've made a level in a video game. Again, thank you, other room. Design block beaten. So let's jump to the takeaways and examine the useful bits of that process, right? I've boiled down the key points here to narrow the possibility space and utilizing the team that you have and the time that you have. So what do I mean? Narrow the possibility space. What I mean here is identifying some restrictions to work within so that you aren't just staring at that blank page. For example, where does this content sit in the game? What levels come before and after this one? Or if we're in an open world, for example, what surrounds this zone? Do we want to build on what came before? Do we want to contrast it? Do we want to subvert it? What lessons have we learned before? Is there a key learning that we can take and just use as a requirement for this level? In the same vein, what's worked well in other levels? What can we steal and rework for this situation? For this case, key examples are looking at what came before. Levels 9 and 10 were actually really big. They had really big footprints. So what if I contrasted that and made this level much more compact? What lessons have we learned? Well, reject symmetry. We already know that one. Don't fall into that trap again. And we know from experience at this point in development that compact footprints actually make for more difficult Rollerdrome levels. They really let the area denial enemies shine. So if that compactness point has come up twice, maybe we should listen to it. And that's why the first thing I did was squeeze the footprint down. And then what's worked elsewhere? The alcove from 06 Arena, the balconies from the mall, the spirit of the weird shape in these previous iterations, they all played a factor in the final version. Okay, next point is utilize team and time. The team had my back. And that was so essential for seeing this through. I received good feedback on every iteration from various members of the team, not just other designers, and that's super important. I do mean utilizing the entire dev team. For example, some people were not sold on this little turd when it was all grey box, but you can ask Art for a cheeky paint over, and you can put those fears to rest. Expanding on that theme, remember that design extends beyond blockout. You can share the load of what you're trying to achieve with other elements of the game. We want the final level to be epic, climactic. Of course we do, but art is going to do a huge amount pulling that the grey box just can't. And yeah, layout's important, but we know how vital an ingredient the enemies are in Rollerdrome. They're going to pull a massive amount of weight when it comes to making this final level challenging and memorable. It's putting a lot of pressure on just the layout when there were other things there that could do the job. Final point, utilizing the time that I had, was equally vital. Working on some iterations and then having time to let that percolate in the back of my brain before coming back to it was a huge help. So schedule it in, talk to your leads, talk to your producers, install some whiteboards next to your toilet or something, I don't know. Anyway, conclusions. This is the end, just to round out the narrative, the timeline. More time passes. The team and I do a bunch of that really unsexy end of project work. And eventually, the game is released. We did it. Yes, we made a game. Oi, oi, we won a BAFTA. Way! Yeah. Thanks. The rest of the team is here, so yeah, good job them. Cool. Yeah, that's the end. Looks like I did speed through it. So this is the slide that's got all of the points on it. If you want that, while you're fumbling with your phones, I'll read out some bits. So the main points: embrace what's new. Embrace the new. In this case, that's figuring out that although yes, Rollerdrome is a skater, yes, it's a shooter, the end result is something entirely new. At its core, it's a game about closing the gap, and utilizing my process, using that to figure that out was really important. Accept and action feedback. Remember, there's no such thing as fix it in art. Do embrace the real superpower of teamwork. And finally, when confronted with design block, beat the fear of a blank page by narrowing the possibility space and utilizing the team that you have and the time that you have to get the best results. Thank you very much. Thank you to all these people. Cool. Thanks, Roll7. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Osama, wherever he is. Cool. I think we do actually have time for questions. Yeah, we have got a few minutes. So, do we have a mic? Yes, we do. Please.
Hello there.
Hi.
So yeah, you talked a little bit about your process with regards to designing, and then having levels be arted up afterwards. So I'm curious to know about the interplay between level design and art. When the level was arted up, did you then have kind of like an oh shit moment at any point where you think, oh, I have to go back, we've got to do a serious redesign here? And if so, how did you deal with that process?
So yeah, did we have no shit moment and have to go back? Of course we did. It's game development. There's actually a whole cut section of this talk, which is about the tools that we use, which were really good, really incredible for grey boxing. Like you saw the weird shapes that we could make, like when we knew how to use the tools, they were amazing for grey box. Harder for art to use. And so, yeah, when the art process happened, we had to be very confident in what we were building because any changes would be very difficult. And there are many sneaky little fixes in collision and that kind of thing to make that happen. But we were in cahoots with them the whole time, right? And we're a fully remote studio, so communication and over communication is super important. I work hard to maintain a good relationship with all the artists. He's not even looking at me. And but yeah, short answer, yes. And we work hard to make that work, but it is hard work. And so, yeah, I think we got there, but yeah. Thanks. Time for any more? Mic somewhere. Sorry, it's just because I'm facing this way. Sorry if anyone was on this side.
Hello. You mentioned, well, you highlighted on the 2 occasions where you felt like you had to sort of reset and go back to research, and that came after sort of director feedback.
Mm-hmm.
However, have you got any triggers or personal habits that you've spotted in yourself where you sort of sit back and do that yourself, where you just realize it's time to go back to do some research?
I think I'm too stubborn for that, to be honest. Unless with that last level where it was like, I don't believe in what I'm making, I could really feel it, right? And so at that point, I'm asking for feedback, asking for ways to make it better. In the other cases, it was like, oh yeah, I'm doing great work here. I'm utilizing my knowledge. I'm playing something when I play it, it's great. And then you watch someone else play it and it's like, oh no. I guess maybe that's the key thing. Just get it in other people's hands so you can have that realization, because otherwise you'll just be playing your perfect level perfectly and thinking this is great. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much.